Which choice best states the main purpose of the text? A number of indigenous politicians have been elected to the United States Congress since 2000 as members of the country's two established political parties. In Canada and several Latin American countries, on the other hand, indigenous people have formed their own political parties to advance candidates who will advocate for the interests of their communities. This movement has been particularly successful in Ecuador, where Guadalupe Lori, a member of the indigenous party known as the PSAT, was elected President of the National Assembly in 2021. So option choice A says, to trace the history of an indigenous political movement and speculate about its future development. This is incorrect because the text doesn't trace the history of an indigenous political movement, nor does it speculate about its future development. The text takes place from 2000 to 2021, which is a relatively short period of time. So nothing of the history is traced of this indigenous political movement. So A is incorrect. B. To argue that indigenous politicians in the United States should form their own political party. This is incorrect because in the text it doesn't say that the indigenous politicians in the United States should form their own political party. It just highlights how there are two different political parties in the U.S. and the indigenous politicians in the U.S. have simply pushed their own candidates forward. They never argue that indigenous politicians in the United States should form their own political party. Therefore, B is incorrect. C. To highlight two approaches to achieving political representation for indigenous people. So this seems to be the correct answer because the text focuses on this, where it highlights in Canada and several Latin American countries, indigenous people have formed their own political parties to advance candidates who will advocate for their interests, and then the U.S., the indigenous politicians have been elected to the U.S. Congress. So these are two different approaches, and the text focuses on these two different approaches. So C seems to be the correct answer. D. To consider how indigenous politicians in the United States have influenced indigenous politicians in Canada and Latin America. This is incorrect because nothing in the text suggests that the indigenous politicians in the U.S. have influenced the politicians in Canada and Latin America. Therefore, D is incorrect. The correct answer is C.